Yeah, we're so glad that we could point out we're starting a new Perek, which is chapter 30, chapter Lamed. We Baruch Hashem finished. As you know, we finished the 29th chapter completely. I think this was, I believe, right, this was the longest class we had, or the most classes we had in one individual chapter. So, but we concluded it, so we started a brand new chapter, Lamed. It is a very fundamental Perek, yet which Perek in Tanya could you say is not fundamental, but it's a very unique Perek Lamed. It sets an interesting precedent, tone of different, perhaps, errors in our service to our Creator, sometimes precisely by the pious, by the one who's classified as a as a frumiyid and wants to believe. Excuse me, let's fix this here. Wants to believe that. Again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakel niyeh bidvari.
Amen.
L'chaim. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are starting a brand new chapter. We finished after quite a few classes on chapter 29, but we concluded this chapter in the last week. So we begin a brand new chapter, Perek Lamed. Indeed, a very fundamental chapter. You could say it in every Perek in Tanya, but you could say it's pretty unique because it sets an interesting perspective, and it sets a clarity on certain areas in one's Avodas Hashem, sometimes precisely by the pious. One considers himself from the pious Jew, which could sometimes be in certain areas could be or certain conducts could be erroneous and unclear, which and could lead to some serious misunderstandings. So this definitely sets a tone. I refer to a little later in the chapter, but let's go on without any introduction. Perek Lamed, the 30th chapter. Oidzais, you can see it again in the Hebrew text. It's naturally the beginning of the Perek, in the beginning of the chapter, and then you could see it in the corresponding English text. I would mention again this class, like any other classes, can be found in this very kosher too, but link Tanya or with a text in an organized fashion with a text on TanyaOnline.com. Everybody's welcome to see it. It's usually within a day or two. It's up on from the class. It's up on that site as well. So we begin Perek Lamed, the 30th chapter. Additional to the above, what we learned last week, or the weeks before, namely in the reflection of the Beinani, which the Alter Rebbe elaborates in this past chapter 29 on his reflection based on his feeling or experience of Timtum Halev, the blockage of his heart. It becomes like a stone. He cannot open his heart to Avodah Shebelev Tefillah, to prayer, which is an emotional experience. And Alter Rebbe goes into this whole notion, how to deal with it, and so on, and various different suggestions, etc. So is additional to this Yasim Elibay. The Beinani should pay attention to Kaim Maimed Azal, to fulfill in the fulfillment of the saying of our masters and teachers of blessed memory, as they write in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of Our Fathers, one should be humble humble-spirited, and in front of all mankind. So, which means that when you look at another person, in front of the other person, you should be shval ruach, you should feel humble. And does it mean something? Does it mean really every person? I mean, I know this guy, I know that guy, I know about their fallouts. I know about their inconsistencies. I know about their negative traits, negative attributes. Does it mean in front of everybody? I know about their different their levels in their observance, in their avodas Hashem, in the service to God. So, does the Mishnah tell me that I have to be humble in front of everybody? So it doesn't say in front of this important person or this important Jew. It says bifnei kol ha'adam, which means every single person who I encounter, in front of that person, or I know of, in front of that person, I have to be humble. How could you demand that from a healthy Jew? In this case, you're dealing with a Beinoni, which makes important efforts, very important efforts, on a daily or hourly or minutely, even secondly, millisecond basis, and a constant millisecond basis in his devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem's Torah, Hashem's mitzvahs. Again, as we know who the Beinoni is, and yet you tell this person, because it's the message is to every single person, the Beinoni, including the Beinoni. He says you want you to be humble in front of every single person, and not just like, it's a good idea, perhaps. Maybe not in front of everybody, or maybe not all the time, and maybe I shouldn't. It's a nice poetic, perhaps, expression, but does it mean that I should really be humble in front of everybody, which means I should consider myself, ultimately means I should consider myself lower than everybody? Shval ruach, which means I consider myself, I classify myself, I categorize myself as someone lower than the other person. And Dr. Rebbe says, vehevei. If the Mishnah tells you, hey, this is a Mishnah, this is the message, a Torah message. And if the Torah tells you, vehevei means vehevei be'emes lamite. Not only if someone asks you, what do you say about you? How do you face yourself in front of this other person? Oh, it's one of the ways that one could demonstrate his humbleness. So one of the ways the person could demonstrate his anivut, his being an anav, his being a humble person. Yeah, the other person is so much better than me. I'm a nothing. Sometimes people point out so much how they're nothing, but in the end of the day, it's another way of talking about themselves. Humble me. Well, I'll demonstrate my humbleness, but as long as I'm in the center of the talk, or center of the arena, in the end, it's all about me. So it doesn't. So which is Dr. Rebbe telling you. Rebbe is pointing this out. It doesn't mean just if someone asks you, how do you compare yourself to this person? Oh, he's so much better than me. I'm a nothing. It's interesting. They used to say, if you say in yourself you're a nothing, then you can accept. But if someone else tells you you're nothing, then you get very upset. And the question is, he said to you, he conveyed to you the same exact message. Answer, because when you said I'm a nothing, or I'm and no comparison, my avodas Hashem, my service to God is no comparison to the other party's service to God, you really didn't mean it. Because if the same message is conveyed by another person, you feel very offended. And that's what Dr. Rebbe says, vehevei be'emes lamite. You should truly be, in your conscious mind, you should be shval ruach, humble, in front of b'fnei kol ha'odam mamish, in front of everybody. And the Mishnah doesn't give.
How do you do it?
The Mishnah doesn't give any limitations. It doesn't say, in front of the tzaddik, or in front of the Beinoni, another Beinoni. Someone else is serving God, maybe he's probably doing better than you, or in front of a person you don't know who he is. But if the Mishnah says kol ha'adam, Mishnah says everybody, it really includes everybody, even someone who is known to be someone who is kal, he says kal shebekalim, someone who's known to be lenient among lenient. You think about someone who, if you want to say someone is a lenient Jew, or a Jew which is lenient with his service to his creator. You ready with someone you understand, somebody who is indifferent, apathetic to the whole seriousness of Avodas Hashem. A person has to be structured, has to be serious. He's on call, he's on duty. Avodas Hashem knows every moment he's on duty, and every moment he or she needs to demonstrate their Avodas Hashem. In other words, because service to God encompasses the entire 24 hours. Not only a person learns, a person davens. The entire 24 hours is ultimately all in a person who ought to engage in his service to his Creator. Obviously, it varies in different levels. Here he's davening, here he's learning, and here he's engaging in worldly affairs. But also, he does it l'shem shamayim, for a godly sake. Or like the pasuk says, "V'chol derechecha da'eyu." In all your ways, know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, Avodas Hashem really encompasses the 24 hours. So this is a structure. In other words, Avodas Hashem demands a person to be structured, to be serious, to be earnest. A kal is someone who is lenient. He's indifferent. He's apathetic about the whole thing. When you say kal shebekalim, mean to say if you round up all these kalim, all these people who are completely cavalier about the whole commitment of the whole Torah mitzvahs, and you say one person among these kalim, he stands out as an additional kal, additionally loose, additionally indifferent, additionally lenient. Kal shebekalim. So you can imagine this person is like lenient among lenient. So he's really, it's not a secret. He doesn't make a secret of it, and no one makes a secret of it. It's obvious. And then the Mishnah says, you should be shval ruach b'fnei kol ha'adam, means say in front of everybody, and it didn't make any restrictions. Means to say if you see that kal shebekalim,
okay,
you have to be humble in front of that kal shebekalim as well.
What about someone who's totally non-observant?
This is pretty much a kal shebekalim to a certain extent. So let me just put this. Let's put in perspective over here. Let's take things out of context. Somebody who's not observant today, right? Somebody who's not observant today doesn't. You have to understand that also, because people are not observant. Many are not observant. They didn't have any education, any Jewish education. So their choices are not really deliberate choices. They don't know. They don't have an adequate knowledge of the right over the wrong. But even then, so to say to be shval ruach in front of them, another one to be humble in front of them, that's not a really big deal, because then there's certain. If you follow them, you notice there's a certain earnestness in people who start knowing and start acquainting themselves even later in life about their Avodas Hashem. You see how they perform every mitzvah with such a attention and such seriousness. Sometimes the way they pray. Sometimes sometimes you stand in envy. How the way they hold their siddur and they're so engaged in their prayer, and sometimes someone who's so accustomed with prayer is not necessarily so focused on his prayer. And other mitzvahs which you see how they so beautifully perform. And many, so like I say, those who learned about Torah mitzvahs later in life. So first of all, they're not to blame, because their choices were not clear-cut choices, because they never had, like I mentioned, an adequate knowledge of what true Torah mitzvahs is about. And conversely, when they do find out about it, sometimes not a big deal to be shval ruach in front of them, to be humble in front of them, because sometimes you see the way they engage in mitzvahs is something very special. And sometimes you can even be envious of them, and the idea of being shval ruach in front of them is not so. It's not a wonder. The idea of it is someone who's a kal shebekalim means that he knows about the importance of Torah mitzvahs. He had the appropriate Jewish education, and he made real choices to be a kal. And among the kalim, he made it another choice to be a kal shebekalim, which means everything. He's completely loose about everything which Torah demands. And yet the Mishnah said, didn't say shval ruach b'fnei, in front of everybody, to the exclusion of kalim, Or maybe let's put the kalim in, but to the exclusion of a kal shebek kalim, one who's lenient among those who are lenient, which means it's so obvious that this person is he's not only not serious about Torah mitzvahs, but much further than that. And yet, when the Torah says, the Mishnah says, it naturally includes that as well, because kol ha'adam means everybody. And this is Alter Rebbe said, so if you're a Fruma Yid and you in Torah you can't pick and choose and say, I'm a religious Jew and I'll do everything that's right, but it has to resonate with me, it has to make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to me, I don't want to follow. So really, to a certain extent, you're serving yourself. Your pattern in life, the idea of Torah mitzvahs, of a Yid, a Shemet Torah mitzvahs, he submits himself to the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if he understands it or not. So one keeps all these different mitzvahs in general, and he follows the words of our sages of blessed memory. But then one of them he backs off and he says, no, this doesn't make sense to me, hence I will not fulfill it. There's a question of your being a Fruma Yid, because it's a question of your submission to the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If it has to make sense to you, and I think something that doesn't make sense to you, you're not going to follow along. So in the end, it's about you. It's not about a complete submission to God. And Avodas Hashem is ultimately a complete submission to God. So the alternative have you have to truly be be'emes lamite, humble and b'nei kol ha'adam mamash, even someone who's a kal shebekali. So how does one do that? Like you asked. That's what this is in Alter Rebbe. We can't fool ourselves. Sometimes we
why do you need to humble yourself in front of everybody? Why do you need to humble yourself in front of everybody? It's good to be humble, but why do you need to?
Why in front of everyone? Means why would I consider? In other words, rightfully. Why? How can I rightfully, in a rightful mind, consider someone a kal shebekalim greater than me in my avodah? I don't mean me myself, the one who the Beinoni
who I'm dealing with. That they're not. If I really know that they're not, how can I consider myself? No, but I really know the other person, and the other person doesn't even make a secret out of it.
Yeah. So I could say that that he's I don't have to stand side by side and say I'm greater than you, but I cannot. Not necessarily that I could accomplish by myself to truly accept this notion that he's greater than me. And if I can't, I don't, and if I don't, I'm not fulfilling the Mishnah, the command, the dictate, or the saying of our sages of blessed memory, which this becomes part of Teiras Emes, which says Havei be'emes havei, not just say it, but truly, Bishval roch b'nei kol adam, which means be'emes lamite. So the question is how. So Alter Rebbe says here is not only just showing you how, because Alter Rebbe is really telling you that Avedis, our service to God, we have to always put things in perspective. Well, once we put things in perspective, sometimes like new ideas, new important ideas will jump back at us in our true reflection, or reflection our reflection in our Avedis, or our cheshbon, our calculation, our reflection, our retrospection in our Avodas Hashem will be performed with much greater clarity. So this is not just, the Alter Rebbe says, extracts over here a Mishnah, which is difficult to understand the Mishnah, but let's reconcile the Mishnah, let's explain the Mishnah. Alter Rebbe says, with this explanation, we'll put our service to God in perspective. And if we put our service to God into right and appropriate perspective, our retrospection will be a healthier retrospection. Hence, or consequently, our service to God will be a healthier Avodas Hashem, a healthier service. So let's see what Alter Rebbe is getting at. So let's focus on this Mishnah. How do we do that? This is based on the Hainu means this is based on another Maimon Azal, another saying of our sages of blessed memory. Do never judge your friend till you will reach his place. This is the literal translation. Till you will be in a state, till you come to his state. State of mind doesn't mean a physical place till you come to the same chair that he sits on. That doesn't mean Mekomo. Mekomo means his state of affairs, and state how he his routine, his or the Seder Hayom, the order of his day, his schedule. Every person, there's no two people have the same state. There's no two people have the exact same state. Not a state of mind, not a state of heart, not state of sets of vulnerabilities, and not the same schedule, and not the same mind frame, and so on. So the Mishnah says, when you see your friend experiencing something which doesn't seem to you to be aligned, which was right, with this which is right, with this which is correct, with this which is divine, this is the godly, you can't judge him till you come to his state, and you may never come to his state. But whatever the case is, till you come to his makom, to his makeup, to his state, you cannot judge. Sometimes the person's state, the place itself, is a contributing cause for him to fall to sin. Now, let me just tell you, say the Alter Rebbe makes it very clear. It doesn't mean that for the person who sins, he says, I'm in this situation. I have to be so many hours in this and outside of my home. I have to be so many hours in this part of town, in this downtown avenue, in this place which is not so modest and so on. Therefore, this justifies my choices. Again, everything is by choice. Just as my choice is not to be so careful in my thought, speech, and action, or my action and speech, or namely my thought, my eyes, my ears, etc. No. For the person who is experiencing this, the Alter Rebbe makes it very clear. Because man has freedom of choice in every given moment of the day. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, the country. The moment you step outside, God infuses in you, or that nefesh elikis expresses itself with another dosage of important energy, exhibits another dosage of important energy for you to overcome the challenges which is presented to you, which are much greater, much more intense than when you are inside your home. So for the person who has this backdrop, or this makom, or as this state that he is in, that is he should never use that as a answer or a justification to his violations, maybe in actions, speech, or even thought, again, which is usually expressed by eyes and ears and so on. Or usually it follows person's what he looks at, or what he deliberately thinks or hears and so on. So for the other person, says ein li shum isnatzlus. There is no isnatzlut, mean to say that there is no, he can and should not ever justify himself. But here we're dealing with the other party, which is looking with a deriding eye on this Kal Shebekalim. He's saying, look how he conducts himself. So the Mishnah says, don't judge him how he conducts himself, because you have not actually given him until he comes to you, till you come to this place. Because many times the Mekaimei, the place that says Gerim Lelachte, causes the person to sin, least Parnasas Lechel Bashuk, because his Parnasas to go in the marketplace Kol Hayom, an entire day. V'leis Meshvikronis, and to be from those who sit in the marketplace. So go tell the Rosh Hashiva, which sits in Kol the whole day, to the Rosh Hashiva, which sits in Kol the whole day, will start comparing himself to somebody who is out there in the street, again, not by choice, but this is the way things have been orchestrated. That's where he receives his parnasa. He's not in a kol, he's not in yeshiva, he's not teaching a class of pure, healthy, children, which don't know anything else than Chumash and Hashem and Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and you're sitting in a whole class, in a class a whole day, in this warm, protected environment, and start comparing yourself to somebody whose parnasa is to be out there, to be in the marketplace. And then how could you compare? And you cannot judge him until you'll have the same schedule, because again, the place causes him to sin, to be again out there a whole day in the marketplace. And his eyes catch all these different temptations. And if the eye sees, the heart starts to, in Yiddish, to desire. A heart starts to demonstrate a lust covet to this which his eye has captured. His Yetzer Hara starts burning like a burning me'aifa. The Lashon in Yeshua, that's the way it's pronounced, that his Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, starts burning like a burning oven uncontrollably. Like it says in Hosea, "Hu be'er ke'esh lahava." But he's burning like an engulfed fiery flame. That's the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara goes on fire, basically. And as a result of his eye capturing certain images, and the heart starts desiring this which the eye has seen, as we say, right? It says the ayin reiv alev chaymet, just like Gemara as well. So the and then that triggers the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara starts literally, it becomes so passionate, fierily passionate. And then Mashaiki Mishael Bashuk, in contrast to someone who, in his schedule, he goes in the marketplace very little. And most of the day he sits in his house. And therefore, how could you compare? And you're going to start judging the other person. He lives a life of hefker. He lives a life with non-control of himself, and he's a low life, and so on. How could you compare you and him? He says what, even if you're somebody who you're deriding or in talking with expressing yourself with condescendence of the other person based on his conduct, and you say, I'm not somebody who sits in kol, I'm not someone who sits in my house the whole day, I am Ha'elach B'shuk, Kolei B'shuk, I have the same schedule as him. But Yachali, as Alter Rebbe tells you here, it could be your nature is very different than the other party's nature, and you're not so passionate. Because the Yetzer Hara is not similar by every single person. Like it says that certain people have the Yetzer Hara one way, some people have the Yetzer Hara other way. Like explained elsewhere. So what are you judging the other person? So it could be at the outset your whole schedule is different, but even and therefore what do you call? So that's Magim Lekayim, which means you're reaching his place, his physical place, his physical setup. So how could you compare? Physical setups are so different from the outset. But he says even if you are someone who has the same type of, your day is made up pretty much of the same as the other party, but how could you judge him? There's no two Yetzer Haras are the same. So with this we can understand that when the pasuk, when the Mishnah says even someone who's a kol shebekal.
Sure, but why should we assume that you do worse than this person should you have been in his shoes?
Why what?
They say don't assume until you're in the other person's shoes. Okay, so you don't judge him. But then
you don't have to judge. We don't have to judge, period. We've got to be non-judgmental.
How do you accomplish
which is a good thing on its own. But if you decide to... But he was saying that even if you come to the area of believing that you could judge the other person, you can't. That's the Gilim Kaimei.
No, forget about judgment. How do you feel humble in front of everyone? Why should you...
So in front of this other person, you cannot stand, say, point out... Not necessarily verbally point out or to the public, even to yourself. You cannot classify yourself as one who stands tall, spiritually tall, in the face of the other person. Say, he's a kol shebekal. Can't do that because you don't know. You're not in the same position, in the same mind frame, or the same. You don't have the same Yetzer Hara. It could be that he overcomes his Yetzer Hara. He could have been doing much worse. And in his state of kol shebekalim, and his Yetzer Hara is like a fiery flame, and much more passionate than yours. And it could be that he could have been much, and it could be that he would have been doing much worse. Or let's say, put it this way: if you had his Yetzer Hara, maybe you would have gone further or lower in your service to your Creator, or not, and you're not obedient, you're not being obedient to your to what halacha and Torah tells you. If you had his Yetzer Hara, so when you see another Jew or you see another person, you have to stand in complete shval ruach, in complete humbleness in front of the other person. Because there's so many circumstances, and there's so many scenarios, and details, and areas, and experiences, which ultimately divide, or ultimately contribute to one's, to one's makeup, or to one's experience, to one's challenges that he or she has. So when you see some, for sure he's better than you. It could be you had his Yetzer Hara, you would have been much further than him, which means much lower than him. It could be that with his Yetzer Hara he's bending himself. It doesn't mean he's a pious Jew. On the contrary, he's a Kal Shebekalim. He's overall not doing the right things. It doesn't, and it's a problem. Like Alter Rebbe is going to say, when you focus on the person himself, Alter Rebbe says no one ever could say, well, the place where I work, my workplace is the reason why I sin. No, you have complete 100% freedom of choices. We're going to read the following few lines. Alter Rebbe focuses on that person. You say, hey, whatever I told party A, not to look in a condescending manner on you, because no two Yetzer Haras are the same, or whatever I told you, could be at the outset your whole schedule is different, and if it's not, it could be he's a much more passionate person. But that's regarding party A. And therefore, when party A looks at party B, he's probably better than me. They be'emes, and again, without any exclusion, the Mishnah says, "B'fnei kol ha'adam," every person, 100%. The other person is better than me. Here, the Alter Rebbe says, "V'hine," you should know. And going back to party B, you should know. Gam yishmachum betivei. Uparnasasi leismi kriyukonis. Focusing on that person. If you feel you're a very passionate person by nature, and your parnasa, your livelihood, comes from the fact you got to be out in the marketplace. Sit on the marketplace an entire day. You should know you have no way of justifying your sins, and you should know you are called a complete Rasha, because remember the Torah, the Gemara classifies a Rasha of someone who violates even one mitzvah. If Torah says one has to guard not only his action, speech, but even thought, one has to be 100% pure. And all those thoughts have to be aligned with the ways Hashem's Ratz and Hashem's command. And if, according to the Gemara, someone violates even once, which means he deliberately accepts, it means knowing that even after realizing this inappropriate thought, that it's inappropriate, and he still says, okay, he entertains the thought, or he's entertained by that thought, he is considered a Rasha, according to the Gemara. Because Torah is a violation of one has to be careful not to follow his eyes and his hearts, especially and get in these areas. And if you do, you're considered a Rasha. So the Alter Rebbe back right now focuses on party A, in other words, the message till now was party B. Don't believe that you stand tall in front of party B. Here, Alter Rebbe of the other party. Here, Alter Rebbe talks to this person. You should know, you yourself, you should know that. Don't take advantage of this. To say, well, I have to sit out in the marketplace, therefore I have to violate from time to time. No, because you called it Rosh Hashanah Pachalikim. No, because the fact that you don't have the fear of God in front of your eyes, and you violate, you could further violate as a result. You consider a Rasha because you, this person, you had to hold yourself back, or hold yourself in, and dominate over the spirit of your covet, of your taiva, of your lust, which is in your heart. Because of the fear of God, which sees all your doings, like we said before, like we explained. And therefore, and what do we explain? Because mind dominates over your heart. And when you let loose, it's your decision, it's your deliberate decision. And don't start telling me, I have to be out there. What do you think I was going to go through those 2 blocks? Or the entire day without impurifying my mind? I'm out there in the marketplace. So Alter Rebbe points at this person, points at this party, and saying it's you have to know that every time you decide to let loose in a certain thought, or in a certain vision, and so on, or a certain eyeing a particular case which is not aligned with Hashem's will, and it's many times quite on the contrary, a clear violation of Hashem's Aved, you should know you're called a Rasha, because you have to have the fear of God, which sees everything, every action of yours, like we said before, and you had to know that despite your heart is sending you all these signals, do that, speak that, look there, entertain yourself with that. No, that's the message of the heart. Mind, by definition, governs the heart. And you had the ability to say to that heart signal, to the signal of that heart, no, or shove it straight back into the heart, metaphorically speaking, naturally. You had the ability to say no, because mind, which knows, which will always know. You know, the heart is bubbly. The heart is sends different messages. Someone can give a good class on the importance of not violating any mitzvah, not transgressing any aveda. And in the same token, he himself can be challenged. But you just gave a class about it, and you just demonstrated in absolute terms how terrible it is, and what purifies his mind. Everything you explained. But you yourself you yourself know you have the same challenge, because there's mind and there's heart. But the heart sends different signals regardless of the mind understanding what the truth is. But at the time that the heart sends the signals, we know mind can govern over heart, meaning to say, despite the heart sends its signal, I could stop it and say, no, you're not going to enter into my thought, speech, and action. And therefore, if I do it, again, I'll have focusing on this person, this party, if you do it, you should know it was your deliberate decision, and therefore you're called a Rasha, because you should have the fear of God in front of you, which sees all your deeds. And when I say your deeds, which means everything about your action, your thoughts, and so on. Because and Alter Rebbe adds bitul dase. Well, I had this word bitul dase. By nature, heart governs over mind. So talking to this person, yes, you have to be careful. But regarding party, the second party, which places himself in the face of there was the other party which places himself in the face of this Hailech Bashuk and Yitzrei Mechumam, and has a passion, Yitzhahara. You can't stand tall and say, I'm greater. You can't stand tall and say, I'm greater, and look at the other person with a condescending, deriding manner. Because no two people are the same. No one's mokim is the same as the other. And therefore, with this, we can understand how to fulfill Vehevei Shval Ruach of Nikol Adam, not only just to say it, but truly Vehevei, to believe, to know, Be'emes Lamite, that one has to be humble in front of every single person. Have a wonderful evening.